So hey everyone, it's Steven Chia and I'm back with another episode of Heart of the Matter. Now, these recent weeks, our social media feeds have been abuzz with stories of fans trying to get their hands on tickets, the likes of Coldplay and Taylor Swift. First, it was Coldplay. It had the fans shouting Viva la Vida with a 6-day concert slated for January next year. Then Taylor Swift decided to enchant our hearts everywhere when she announced that she too would play for 6 days in March. So if you've bought, tried to buy tickets or are planning to get tickets, it's likely that you were slammed with a frustrating experience. Not to mention probably burnt a pretty big hole in your pocket too. Coldplay sold out all 6 days within hours. Queue numbers exceeded 1 million at one point. That's right, talking about 1 million people in the virtual queue. Why has it become so hard to buy a ticket to see your favorite musician perform live? And what has changed in the last few years? Too many middlemen? Or is it all down to these beastly bots which are used by scalpers? Whether you're a Swiftie or just hoping to be sent to paradise by Coldplay, did you even stand a chance to begin with? To help me discuss this issue today, I have Adelyn Aidzil, an avid concert goer and also a Swiftie.
Yes, hi!
She's already excited, just the name of a Swiftie being mentioned. Economist Walter Theseira from the Singapore University of Social Sciences.
Hello.
Joe Au, CEO of SISTIC Singapore.
Hello.
Okay, welcome everyone. Actually, any of you going to the concerts? Coldplay? Anyone? No? Even me. Adelyn, only Taylor Swift. That's the one you're gunning for.
Yes.
Okay, that's going to be coming up soon, right?
Yes.
Have you planned for how you're going to get tickets?
I'm going to go for the UOB one and see my luck because it is all about luck. So it's my family, which is my sister-in-law, my brother-in-law, and I were really like gunning for it all together. And we've been planning it since when she released the dates. Even we were actually trying to see for Sydney and Tokyo dates. We were just trying anything to get the tickets. But we tried for Sydney, which we couldn't get because the system was too slow. But somehow yesterday, we found out that Japan released international tickets and we were trying our luck. So we just booked 2 dates and now we have to wait for them to confirm whether we get the tickets. But yeah, they have our credit card details and everything. We're just waiting for the Japanese.
This is in Japan?
Yes. Because
in Tokyo?
Yeah, the Tokyo Dome one. Because initially they didn't open for international tickets.
Right.
It was just for the Japanese fans. And then somehow we found on TikTok this Filipino girl. She was like, oh my god, they opened international tickets! And so she got 13 tickets like immediately. And we went crazy. So we tried our luck.
So if you
for
get
2 days.
if you get the tickets confirmed for Japan, for Tokyo and Singapore, you're going to go to both.
Yeah, we were like set. 2 shows.
This is a podcast, but only if you could see her face now. It's a glow. She's all lit up with...
Yeah, because she hasn't come for like 8 years, so it's kind of like we have to see her after so long.
Okay, whereas the rest of us in this room, obviously not Swifties, you know. But Joe, you've just heard her story. SISTIC is not selling tickets for either of these concerts here in Singapore, you know. But is this what fans have to encounter nowadays when trying to get tickets for big concerts and big name events?
Yes, very much so. The demand greatly outstripped the supply. And with the pandemic in the last 3 years, with nothing going on, with all these big acts coming in, fast and furious, it's really driving out a lot of demand.
Okay, and it really is first come, first serve.
First come, first serve. It's a queue.
It's a queue and just pretty much luck of the draw.
Yes, in the form of joining the queue as early as you could. So there is a component of luck in there.
But there are all these pre-sales. They tie up with credit cards, as you mentioned, UOB with promoters, venue operators. So there's so many algorithms.
Yes, it's all in the form of trying to create this ability to be fair to the fans. Right? Because there are certain bottlenecks in how tickets could be sold. Unlike when you're selling inventory in the e-commerce, for example, if I'm selling t-shirts, I've got 10,000 t-shirts to sell. I don't really care which t-shirt I'm selling. I've got 10,000 to draw down from. But if you're selling seats in National Stadium, let's say 50,000 seats, for example, each seat is unique. So you need to make sure that when a fan comes in, they hold these seats, they have 10 minutes to make the payment. If they pay, these 2 seats is theirs. If they don't pay, these 2 seats have to go back in the system. So it's actually quite complex when you're trying to handle concurrent users coming in, making purchase of these tickets. So that's why you will always need to have a queuing system to make sure that you are queuing people to come in a very sustainable rate for them to be able to come in, select the tickets and they buy. If they choose not to buy, how to release the seats back to the system so that other people can buy.
Wow.
It's a queuing thing that has to happen.
And everybody, of course, wants to get in right at the start to make sure they get a chance at the tickets. But with the promoters, do you sometimes set aside a batch of tickets for the promoter?
We do work with the promoters for that. So the promoters will give us instructions on, okay, they will hold back some of the seats because it could be for sponsors, it could be for VIPs, for guests, but it's typically limited to a certain percentage.
So from what we hear, we understand also that Live Nation Entertainment is a large group that now dominates much of the market since it merged with Ticketmaster. In fact, it's estimated that they control 70% of the ticketing and live event venues market today, and that's on a global scale, right? So Walter, this seems like almost a monopoly. Is it good or bad for the business and for the consumer?
I think it's a bit of a complex question because you have several parties involved in this supply chain, right? You've got the ticketing companies, and they're the ones who actually handle the logistics of getting the tickets into the hands of the fans. But you also have the acts, you have the bands and the promoters, and they have somewhat different objectives, right? Because basically their job is to try to figure out, well, how many evenings or how many shows do I play? And what's the price that I want to set my initial tickets at? How do I actually want to release the tickets to the fans? And a lot of people here are obviously concerned about not being able to get their hands on tickets. They're also worried about scalpers and things like that. But the real puzzle is, why don't the people who are playing, right, the bands, the promoters and so on, why don't they set higher prices for their tickets? Because if they did set higher prices for their tickets, then most likely you wouldn't have so much excess demand, you wouldn't have so many complaints about scalpers and so on. You'd be paying higher prices up front. There are really probably two reasons why the promoters don't set high prices to begin with. One is that in reality, they can't perfectly predict demand. So obviously, you look at Coldplay, everybody says, look, they could have set higher ticket prices, they could have played more shows, but they wouldn't necessarily have known at the time that they were booking these stadiums and so on what the real demand is going to be. So that's one. The other factor is that a lot of the promoters and bands out there, they actually do want a long-term relationship with their fans. And they realize if they set the maximum price that the fans are going to be willing to pay, they're going to annoy all of their fans. And that wouldn't be good for their long-term relationship. So these are the reasons why they set these lower prices, and then you've got excess demand like this.
Well, the pure demand and supply, it would make sense to set higher prices. But that's why I think Coldplay, the cheapest was like $70 around there. But you'd be sitting at the back with binoculars probably. But yet the fans still feel I was there at the concert, right? Is that the same for you, Adelyn? I mean, is it you just want to be in the same space?
Yes, I just want to be close to her, right? In vision, I can see her like really
but she's like,
around.
There are 40,000 people in between you and her.
Oh, I would just like, whatever it takes, just to see her and like perform and like be in the same room and her vibe and everything. I think it's just a different atmosphere. I would have to watch many shows up close to be able to appreciate the nosebleeds.
Seriously, what is your maximum in terms of how much you would pay for a ticket?
Like, I wouldn't go beyond $1,000. In budgeting also, we have to see whether it's worth it or not, right?
Yeah.
But like, if it's for overseas, of course I have to factor in all the pricing. But also, if it's cheaper, why not? But in Singapore, if I already watch overseas, I'll probably not be too close to Taylor, but maybe a bit like further up, because I already seen her up close in probably like Tokyo if I get it. And then in Singapore, it's more of like, let's just vibe and like, in the atmosphere. So yeah, it's not too expensive, also not too
still,
cheap.
$1,000.
Yeah, I know.
That, to
because,
me,
I'm going for 2 shows, so it's like I gotta like factor in.
So this is because you're going for 2 shows.
Yes,
if you were
in
going
Singapore.
for just 1 show,
one show is probably like 300 max, 300 to 400. That's it.
So you're saying altogether you would spend about 1,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I'm thinking about 2 shows.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, and does that sound reasonable, Joe?
It's reasonable. I mean, the Cat 1 tickets for Coldplay is about 300.
Yeah. So why not have the extremes? Have the tickets that are available to all, and then have a gap, and then suddenly have the $800 tickets,
I think they might have like the packages.
Yeah?
Where
They
the VVIP, so there's like probably
Very
like 800 to 1,000.
If we use Coldplay as an example, overall ticket prices across the board has not increased significantly. If we compare to everything else that we're spending money on, for example, entertainment tickets, arts tickets have not increased significantly. I think a lot of promoters are trying to keep things as accessible and affordable. But what they have done instead is they have introduced new categories of tickets and they have bundled in additional experiences. For Coldplay, it was a little bit unusual because they also have a very low tier ticket price at about $68. Most of the bigger acts might not have such a low tier as well.
So could that be because the band said, I want to have
affordable tier of tickets?
Yeah. Actually, how does it work? I'm not sure if you know, but whenever we see these large ticket prices, how much of it actually goes to the band?
We don't have the details of how much the ticket proceeds goes to the band versus the event organizers and promoters and all of that. It differs acts to acts, it differs markets to markets. It also differs according to whether this particular promoter secure the acts across one stop or multiple stops. If I've got Taylor Swift coming to both Singapore and Tokyo, for example, then the negotiation of the fees and the sharing and all that is very vastly different versus a single stop or versus 30 stops in the States and 20 stops in Europe.
So they may work out with them beforehand and say, I'll pay you X amount of dollars for a 10-day tour in 3 countries and all the criteria, and then everything else is borne by the promoter. Because there were reports also of a Coldplay ticket going for $12,000 in Malaysia. In Singapore, we've seen them going for over $1,000 on Carousel. But as you mentioned, the most expensive ticket was only about $300. So is this something that will always exist? Is there any way to get rid of these people? It's
unlikely to get rid of them. In Singapore, there is no legislative to govern selling of second-hand goods. So it is not illegal to sell second-hand goods. A ticket is considered a resale of an item.
Right.
As long as it's not a scam, if it's a valid transaction, it is not illegal. Even though under the T&Cs, when you purchase a ticket from any ticketing agent, we forbid you to transfer or resell. There are terms and conditions within the ticket.
But how will you know? And how can you check on that?
It is very difficult for us to check, right? So for example, when the ticket gets listed on Carousel, for example, typically when we are notified of it, we will try to contact the individual in the first place to try to figure out, are you the legitimate seller or buyer of the tickets? We'll advise them to take the notice down. But again, we have no right to force.
Well, it was true because I buy a ticket, but for some reason I can't make it. I can give Walter my ticket and then he can just give me some money in return, right? The idea is that we're trying to prevent the resellers and the scalpers, right? I think you just mentioned in Japan how they had reserved tickets only for the locals. Is that something we could do here in Singapore too, where you got to be either Singaporean or a PR and then you get first dibs?
It's not a technical limitation if we want to enforce the use of, let's say, SingPass before you can make a purchase. It is possible. It's really more of how do you position this event in Singapore to the region as well, right? We do want to make sure that it is accessible. We do want to make sure that it is fair. So even though you're a foreigner coming inbound, or you're a foreigner residing in Singapore, you should have the option to make a purchase to a goods.
I guess so, in a free play market. But, you know, I was in Indonesia and in Jakarta and they were saying, your concert, half of them are Indonesians. You know? Walter, what do you think? The idea of having a priority for locals?
The issue is this. Locals, when they see the fact that a lot of foreigners buy tickets to events in Singapore, what they're obviously thinking is that if these tickets were reserved only for locals, whether because the band say so or because the government say so, locals obviously believe that means that all the tickets will then be available for them to buy at the same price. But in reality, many of these acts will actually book the Singapore market intending to sell on through the regional market as well. Because the Singapore market is actually not that big at all. It's actually an attraction, right, that the Singapore market offers them the opportunity to sell on to a regional market, which might not justify the act actually going there to a regional city. And if you remove the ability to sell through to the regional market, that may mean that some acts don't find it justifiable to come to Singapore, or it may mean that they reduce the number of nights that they play. And so we have to be careful about that. The other point I'd make is that I think from the government point of view, there's really no justification for government policy to interfere in this particular market, right? Because there's no government subsidy to these acts.
Hello, my name is Steve Lai.
And I'm Teresa Tang.
And we are the hosts of CNA Correspondent,
a podcast that takes you to the heart of the work our correspondents do across the globe.
From China's COVID response,
to the childcare center massacre in Thailand,
from the fall of Najib Razak,
to the rise of Anwar Ibrahim as Malaysia's Prime Minister.
We speak to the people at the reporting front lines.
So, if you want to know how the biggest global stories unfold,
make sure you follow or subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts.
It's interesting. I was told again in Jakarta, the Coldplay was only performing for one night with no extension, whereas in Singapore, we also saw, the extension of nights. That is something that I guess depends on how the first few nights sell, right?
That's correct.
So do they all come in with this plan that I'm here for 1 week, but I know it's 3 nights, but maybe it'll become 5?
There is a pre-planning of the P&L, right? How much this whole thing is going to cost, how much tickets they need to sell to make money, and to gauge the supply and demand necessary for the concert itself. Most concert promoters will plan the specific dates. They have to secure the venue in advance as well. So if there is any surge in demand, they will then have to negotiate the venue to try to figure out whether there are open slots that can then open up for them to do the next few shows. Sometimes it is a marketing tactics as well. That means they've secured 2 nights, they sell 1 night first, and then they open up a second night. Other times it's purely they only have 1 night. They then have to talk to the venue to try to figure out whether the second night is available.
Yeah, it's interesting because we're just talking about also Jackie Chung, the Chinese singer, and he's got 11 nights,
11
right?
nights, yes.
So, I mean, these people, where are they coming from? But what about technology in terms of dealing with all the bots and the resellers? Some have suggested to also tag tickets so that each person is maybe limited to buying a certain number, certain restrictions. I mean, do all these kind of things work?
They do work to a certain extent. So behind the scenes, there's actually a lot of technology in play to try to detect and block traffic coming from suspected bots sources. So these are all different measures at a technology level that is in play. Other things are like waitlist functionalities to allow pre-registration so that you are guaranteed a pre-sale period.
Okay.
There are virtual waiting rooms that we'll set up. So within the virtual waiting rooms, if we suspect that you're bot traffic, we can challenge you with a captcha or something like that. So to make sure that we block you off before you go into the actual queue to make a purchase. There is a lot of these functionalities that needs to come in to make sure that we try to, as much as possible, detect that you are a legit human traffic coming in to make the purchase before you join the queue.
But you can't stop Adelyn, who may recruit 20 of her family members to
We
all
will
go
not be
online
able
at the
to
same
stop
time,
that,
right?
or for her to open up 5 phones and 2 laptops to queue at the same time.
I think there's a business opportunity there somehow.
I saw on Carousel, they'll be like, okay, I'll give you like a certain amount. You guys help me queue for Taylor Swift tickets. I'll pay you if you manage to snag it. So there are people who are willing to pay, but they don't want to queue, but reach out and say, okay, I'll pay you a certain amount. You manage to get the tickets I want. I'll pay you this amount.
Would you ever buy a ticket from a scalper who is, let's say, offering the ticket at double the price?
No.
Yeah. Not desperate enough? I thought...
I mean, it depends on the seats also. If it's really like, okay, the one that I want and I couldn't get it initially, then yeah, I have no choice. But usually I'll try as best as I could.
So as a genuine fan, what are the lengths you would go to? So queuing overnight at some place, at SingPost, in front of some ticketing booth somewhere?
I won't queue at the SingPost, but my family and I will be on the laptop and really like monitoring. We will always like see movements and see what we can do to be able to just get into the queue and like manage to snag at least like how many tickets we can get.
And how do you...
And we will pre-plan, we will sit at a sitting plan. I was like, okay guys, we are going to sit at these seats. Once you get in, either one of you get in, we will spread out Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and anybody get in, just buy. 4 shots, go! Yeah, we will do that. So that's what we plan, and then who comes first and then get it and luck.
Okay.
But usually there is some limitation sets as well. So a single transaction, no more than 4 tickets. So once you get past the transaction, you have to rejoin the queue if you want to purchase again. So just to again ensure some fairness.
So if I need 6 tickets, then I got my 4.
You will have to buy
then I
twice.
go back to the line of 1 million people.
Potentially.
Yeah, or you can ask another one to help
Or your
you.
friends, your relatives.
So at least it's different like connection, different higher possibilities.
Are you okay with doing that? Or your friends, okay? Do you feel this is a fair system of getting tickets?
If you're a big fan, yes. But if you're not a big fan and you are just going in the line just to get money out of it, it's a bit unfair for those who are really big fans, who really save up for Taylor Swift. It's a bit unfair. Sometimes sculptures buy it for the sake of buying it, but they do not actually want to go for it, but they want to resell it in a very high price. And then the fans who see, oh God, it's like 300, but you are selling me at 1,000, it's a bit too much. So they feel like, oh no, it's not reachable anymore.
So if you don't get tickets this time, how will you feel?
I'll be sad. That's why I'm looking at other markets. We really try everything. Like we will go like see Tokyo and Sydney, but Sydney now is out, so we will probably try to bank on Tokyo and really like bank on Singapore. Like we will really try very, very hard. If not, just resell, no choice, and see whether it's something that we want to spend on. But we have no choice. But
can't just shake it off and let it go.
Cannot, because we really want. I've been waiting for her to come. It's been 8 years, guys.
Okay. We're just so thrilled by your excitement and your enthusiasm.
If you really see my family, we have been planning for the past few days on how to see and get whatever we can and like go for it, man.
Yeah.
That's the kind of fan we are.
Walter can't contain his laughter. I mean, why? As an economist, I mean, it actually makes pretty good sense in a way, right? This is a good way to make money.
You mean being a scalper?
No. Actually, that too. The whole model, in a way. There is no way to make it truly fair, right?
Yeah, but this is the interesting thing about the whole business model of being a big band or big act, right? Which is that obviously you're doing it to make money, right? I mean, you do have to pay the bills and everything like that. There's a lot of people who are depending on you to bring in the ticket revenue. But at the same time, you also have to recognize when you're choosing your pricing strategy that you don't want to alienate your fan base, because you're going to have a lot of fans out there who can't afford to pay maybe the maximum price for tickets. So you want to make sure that they have a fair chance of attending your show. And that really puts a constraint in your pricing. It means that first you have to worry, okay, the pricing difference between the cheapest and most expensive tickets can't be too big. You also can't have too many of your tickets available at the high end, because then everybody's going to say, look, this has become a rich man's concert, So there are a lot of constraints on that don't exist in other markets. So, just think about comparing this to, let's say, the airline business.
Yeah.
In the airline business, you have also a limited commodity. There are only so many seats you're selling on that particular plane. And it's pretty normal to just keep pushing up the prices if you start to run out of seats. But in the concert business, people don't do that because they're worried that if they start doing that, the fans will say, you're trying to get away with something here. This is not fair to us. There are these fairness constraints that don't exist in a lot of other markets.
So I guess the best way is sometimes just, if you can add on an extra night, you get to have so many more people come and enjoy the show. Well, thank you so much. I hope you do get your tickets. For many, I guess the experience of being in the same space as your favorite artist, to sing, shout, dance along with fellow fans, the atmosphere can't be captured anywhere else. I guess you could say it's paradise. but if you can't, if you didn't know that was from Coldplay, but if you can't get your hands on that ticket, yes, it will leave you a bit of a blank space.
And
don't worry, you can just shake it off.
off.
Yeah. Otherwise, I might leave you with some bad
blood.
There we go. Just testing her. On that note, all the best to all of you who are getting to see your idols up front. The team here at Heart of the Matter, we're going to take off for a season break. We're going to look into the stars and see how they shine and all the things that we do. Yeah, it can be a bit yellow. We're back in the first week of August, and you will get to enjoy more of such bad dad jokes. The good folks behind Heart of the Matter are Jacqueline Chan, Joanne Chan, Tiffany Ang, Gradel Teo, Saya Win, and Crispina Robert. I'm Steven Chia saying, keep talking, keep connecting. We'll see you in August.